Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jen. We're back with Unscripted with Ally and Jenn for 2025 season 2.
I know. I'm number one, I'm shocked that we're here. It's January. We're in season 2. And while yes, we're unscripted, we did a little planning this year. So I feel like we're back and better than ever because we are not fully flying by the seat of our pants as we were all of 2024.
Yeah, and y'all, we might get even fancier as the year gets on. We're talking intro videos, outro videos, maybe some little like jingle that we can all do a little bit of this coming into the show to raise the vibration, because we're going to need a lot of vibration raising in 2025.
We are. I think there's a lot of things happening that are out of our individual controls. And what we can control is helping thought leaders get their messages out there and really awesome humans getting their stories out there.
Yes. And we need awesome humans and we need thought leadership. And we also need miracles, which I believe can happen through the written word. Truly.
I genuinely believe that too. And it's exciting because I think one of the things, obviously we have a lot of commonality, which is why we continue to do this. But I think one of the things that we really align on is the fact that we know that storytelling really is such a powerful tool, because even if it's just one person who needs to hear that particular story or hear that message that the author wrote in one, like just a tiny specific way, it's helping at least that one person. And when we know it helps one person, we know others are going to be helped too.
Yeah, ripple effect, baby. It's like skipping that stone on the lake, like you're shooting for one, but you're hoping that you're going to get more. And you often do. But I find that when you focus on like impacting the one, it often means that like there'll be many more to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, number one, I want to just say, if you're here joining us live, we would love to know that. We love in the chat, in the comment section. And while we can't write back to you if you're coming in from LinkedIn, we will acknowledge you verbally out loud. We will let you know that you were here. And of course you can catch the replay too, and we welcome your comments after the fact. So obviously what we're talking about today is up on the screen. However, Jenn alluded to the fact that we've done a little more planning for this year. So a couple things that I know that I would like to tell everyone, and Jenn, you can piggyback off me. Number one, all of the unscripteds for 2025 are scheduled. So if you love this show, and we hope that you do, you already know when all of the unscripteds are planned for this year. Hopefully nothing will change, but hey, life happens. But they're all planned. The events are all set up so you can see when we're going to be going live, and you can see the topics that we're going to be covering. And I think what's really exciting about being a little bit more planning focused in that event is that we've been able to really think about what might be 12 questions that we get a lot from authors that they would want to know the answers to. And that's kind of the focus of this year's season. And then we're going to be bringing in some special guests along the way. That part we're still working out, although we've got some names in mind. So it's not going to be just Jenn and I talking heads, although we've got plenty to say.
And I think we're entertaining. So there's that.
We're at least entertained by us. We're hoping you are too. And we've also thought about how the topics kind of come off of the heels of the one before it, right? Jenn, anything else you want to say about season 2 before we dive into today?
I think you captured it really well. Like we have an arc to what we're talking about this year. Whereas last year it was kind of like we finished an episode and we're like, all right, what do we want to talk about next month that's timely and relevant? This year we have like a nice story arc, which I feel like is applicable considering, you develop stories and we publish them. And so it would make sense that we'd have some kind of flow and arc to it. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Also, can we just mention that I'm pretty sure in 2025 that we will have our first book baby to talk about and promote. Is that true?
I can't wait. And I think we should do a special episode that we plug in for her launch.
Okay. And if you're wondering what on earth is a book baby, Jenn and I have the fabulous occasion where we have a mutual client, somebody who worked with me on the manuscript development that chose Jenn as their publisher. And so that book that we are birthing together with the client, we won't leave her out of it. She's kind of a big part of this. That should be coming out in 2025. So that'll be really exciting to promote. So special episode. We can bring her on. I think it'll be a great time.
Yeah, we'll have to email her after this to be like,
Yeah.
look what we just brainstormed. This is the
Look at
beauty of
what we just
Unscripted.
brainstormed live without your knowledge. And now it's there for the whole world to know. So you can't say no to us because it's already happening.
And why would she? It's promoting her book. Come on.
So as you can tell, folks, we are still going to be very much unscripted, even if we did plan all of the topics for the rest of the year. There's heavy amounts of ad-libbing and all of a sudden, it's a very difficult word to say. There's lots of syllables there.
Improvisation.
Thank you. Okay, without further ado, what are we talking about today?
All right, so we are going to dissect the idea of what's really the truth about your book's ROI. It is something that we at PYP talk a lot about because we're working with authors that, we most of the time they're business authors and we want them to get an ROI on their book investment. And from a manuscript development standpoint and a ghostwriting standpoint, those are investments. And we want to make sure that our authors collectively are getting that return on their investment. And it's a little bit about kind of like their time. Like there's a lot of kind of things wrapped into this. And so fortunately, a number of organizations came together. And so I want to make sure I get the names right. So Amplify Publishing Group, Gotham Ghostwriters, Smith Publicity, and the Thought Leadership Leverage worked together to conduct a survey of 350 authors between April and August of last year. And they put together this really comprehensive 32-page report that really talks about the business book ROI. And so we're not going to go into all of what they have to say, but we are going to kind of cover the highlights that we collectively thought would make sense. But I'm going to put on the screen here for anyone who wants the full report, and I'll put this up later too, but it's authorroi.com. I cannot recommend it enough because it is packed with really, really concrete information that I feel like this industry has kind of been broadly missing for a while, because I think a lot of us are kind of working like on anecdotal evidence or just kind of like I'm looking at 200 books that we've published and kind of going based on that, whereas this is kind of bringing in a different lens to the table. And so I'm excited to kind of just unpack this a little bit with you.
Yeah, and I also want to let people know that while Jenn noted Amplify, Gotham, Smith, Thought Leadership Leverage, they actually worked with some organizational psychologists and a psychometrician. I hope I'm saying that word right, to actually design the survey instrument. So this is what I'm saying is this is a legit kind of survey with data. It's not that Amplify, Gotham, and Smith and Thought Leadership Leverage just put together a Google form and sent it out and then looked at what people had to report back. There was more detail and more involvement here in terms of the actual kind of science behind the survey. So, but I also think that I just want to underscore as well, while we're covering some highlights, the highlights are of those 350 authors or prospective. So it included both people who were hoping to publish and also people who had published. And of the amount of people that were surveyed, 301 of them had published nonfiction books. 2/3 of them had published multiple books. So there's some data in here that also reflects like, what about the ROI on somebody who's done this more than once, right? Because it's not like when you get ROI on one book that you automatically replicate that right in your second or third book. There's also information in here, and I'm just highlighting this so that you will go and read the whole thing because there's such a wealth of information. It touches on traditional publishing, hybrid publishing, self-publishing, right? Different avenues, and looking at, okay, well, what does the data say about return on investment based on the way that you might have published? Okay. So maybe we want to start there, Jenn. There was a highlight that you had noted that you wanted to draw some attention to.
Yeah, there's kind of two pieces in here because I think, we're in our second season of the show and our seasons are long. We do a whole 12-month season. So
because we love each other.
We do. And it's fun. And when it stops becoming fun, then we'll stop. But I highly doubt that's going to happen. So
when we get bored, we're stopping.
That's exactly it. And the fact that this has kept our attention spans, honestly, does feel somewhat miraculous.
It's the only live show I kept in my marketing plan for the year.
I think that says a lot. And, and I think one of the things that we're always talking about, or at least I am, because PYP is a hybrid publisher, is just what is hybrid publishing? And so many people don't know. And I know we've covered it, in the past on other shows. And what I love, one of the data points that they summarize on page 3 is that hybrid publishers deliver better service. So it basically says that the authors were almost split evenly between traditional and hybrid. And so when we look at, and it says authors with hybrid publishers were more than twice as likely to agree that they were satisfied with their publishers. And that's looking, and we're looking at traditional publishing, which are often the New York publishing houses, the big corporate entities, and then self-publishing on the other side, where you're kind of doing everything on your own. So I love that it just kind of basically says that self-published authors, hybrid published authors are twice as likely to agree that they were really satisfied with their publisher. So that makes me happy to see, because my hope genuinely is that more people know that hybrid publishing is an option. Would I love for people to work with us? Of course I would. But there are so many nuances, and we work with a really select type of author, and other hybrids kind of have their own select authors that they also work with. And so it's really a matter of kind of finding the right path for you. But the other thing that I want to draw attention to, because that is more specific to the actual ROI of this, is that median sales for a traditionally published book were 4,600 copies. 1,600 copies were the median sale for hybrid published books, followed by 700 for self-published books. So I think that what's important to see here is that I think a lot of times authors want to kind of get that coveted traditional publishing deal, but the reality is that it's just not accessible for the majority of publishers. It really is kind of like the 1% of authors have access to a traditionally published deal. So then you have authors who are like, I don't know what I should do. Should I go hybrid? Should I self-publish? And when we look at it to say, if you self-publish, the median sale is going to be 700, but if you're hybrid publishing, it is more than double at 1,600. So that kind of gives me a lot of comfort to show, yes, there are a lot of really awesome hybrid publishers in the space who are clearly doing good work for that number to be more than double of somebody kind of doing it on their own. So those are the two kind of big highlights that I took away.
Yeah, and to support some of that, so on page 26, and this is a little bit more generic or general, but the percentage of books that had positive ROI. So hybrid publishing is listed as 53%, which is good. I mean, like you're getting at least 53%, at least half of, right, of those books seeing positive return on investment. Now, I think one thing to just make clear here, like when we're talking about return on investment, in this way, we're talking kind of like dollars and sales, right? Not just book sales, but also there's some data in here about like, speaking engagements or, other revenue streams, right, that your book has promoted that you receive. It's not necessarily incorporating energy.
Yeah.
While there is some data about, how long people spent on writing their books, or some data on, authors spending more than they expected to, right? Which also factors in, right, on investment, right? You spent more dollars than you were aiming to, you spent more time, that kind of thing. What a lot of this data is really pointing to is hard numbers. Like, that's what we're looking at. And also to underscore again, we're talking about business books. So this is not necessarily, we wouldn't necessarily see the same results perhaps with fiction. And actually, I don't even know, it says nonfiction, but it also says business book. So I'm not even sure if this is factoring in memoir, for example, which is still considered nonfiction, but is a very different type of book and different type of sell strategy when it comes to that return. Now, I do want to, before we go back into the study, I do want to make sure that people know that we did do an episode last year in March called Getting More Bang for Your Book, Revenue Generating Opportunities, which I think is a really good episode to go catch or rewatch aside this one. Because in that other episode, we really dove into, well, what does it mean for return on investment, and how should you be looking at return on investment in your book? Because it's not just a 1-to-1 ratio of you spent $10,000, so now you need to sell X number of copies to make $10,000 back. So we go into those details a little bit more in that last year episode. So we've linked to that episode in the show description, so you have access to that. But I think between that episode, this report, this episode, you're going to have a lot of knowledge, more so than a lot of other kind of aspiring authors who are not tapping into some of these resources and really understanding this whole picture, like the economics of writing and publishing a book. Jen, other things that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, the other thing that I will share, and then I think that'll lead into the kind of the ghostwriting side, is that the report shows that the median revenue that books in this report generated was $18,200. And what I think is interesting, because it says traditionally published books more than tripled that amount, and hybrid published books nearly doubled it. And again, just kind of showing that hybrid is a viable option in here. And obviously, again, traditional is always a great path if you have access to it. It's just the fact that it's just not really accessible to many. And it shows that among authors with books out for 6 months or more, that 18% of this group reported an increase or reported 250,000 or more in income from speaking, consulting, and workshops, which generated much more income than book sales and royalties. And I say this on the reg, telling people that you are not going to make your money back and get an ROI on book sales alone.
Right.
Do I know the numbers of what that is? So like for most of the books that we publish, if an author can sell about 1,600 books or so, and that's at not necessarily the retail rate, but they're selling it in bulk to people, they're selling it at conferences, from their website, things like that, where there's a higher profit margin, that usually gets people back to black, right? Like that can get them to the ROI. However, it is much, much easier to say, all right, I'm going to invest 20, 25,000 in the publishing process of this book. Let me go out and find a couple of speaking engagements that are 7,500, 10,000 each. That gets you back much, much more quickly. So I love that it's basically saying that, 18% of people are seeing reporting 250,000 or more in income. That is a big number, because I think a lot of authors would probably be thrilled with 50,000 or 100,000. So to even say 18% hit 250,000, I think is a really remarkable number.
But I think that the focus there is in all those other activities, not necessarily just book sales. So like on page 22, right, it specifically says the real revenue gains were in other categories, right? Among authors who generated revenues in each category, speeches generated a median revenue of $30,000, consulting $50,000, and workshops $40,000. And then other authors saw windfalls in categories like corporate sales, partnerships, and salary increases as a result of their books. And then more than 70% of authors reported increases in leads or gigs, right? So that direct correlation between your business and your book, which I know we talk about in that March 2024 episode. So this is really like proving out what we have always preached. And I know what each of us talk about in our own books, shameless plug in a moment, which is that like your book is like the hub of a wheel, and there's all the spokes that go from the hub to the tire, right? That are all the different revenue streams and ways that you get ROI from your book. So, when we're looking at, 250,000, okay, that's not necessarily that millions of your book has sold. It's all these other beautiful opportunities that might have presented themselves that had high price tags, right?
That's exactly it.
That your book generated opportunity from. So I think that's really, really important to keep in mind. Okay, so shameless plug. And now for our commercial break. Before we go into some of the information around the ghostwriting aspect of things that this report highlights, Jen, what do you have for us?
Well, interesting you should ask. Oh, good. Thank you for having the visual, because it's also behind me.
Do a little zoom in here. Yeah.
Yes. So because it is January, 'tis the season that people are thinking about, how should I want to do this? And there's obviously some changes happening globally that are impacting, I think, people's desire to like the urgency to hurry up and share their story. So this is Publish Your Purpose. It's my book, baby. It's a step-by-step guide to write, publish, and grow your big idea. And so the whole purpose is to truly give a step-by-step guide of how do I get in the right mindset? And she's a little bit girthy. How do I get in the right mindset? How do I actually get it written? And then what are my next steps for the publishing process? Which then leads us to my book baby's fraternal twin.
Sister from another mister.
Sure is.
Do not write a book until you read this one. Subtitle, not even on the cover, and not one that I ever remember because it's just so darn long. But the only guide you need to pen, publish, and profit from your nonfiction book. So really proud of this. She's also got some hips.
She sure does. She's hippie.
She sure does. She's a beautiful thing. She's curvaceous and awesome.
And she's beautiful.
Honestly, like, we call them twins because these books could not be more similar. Actually, true story for those of you, not us, we know this story, but for those of you who haven't been following us along or haven't caught the first episode, which is, I think, when we tell this story the most,
probably.
You know, Jen and I were both working on these books at the same time without knowing each other was working on them, until Jen asked me for an endorsement, asked me to review the book. And I had to decline because it was a conflict of interest, as I was writing one that had nearly the same content. So we were writing them at the same time. I think they published within 6 months of one another.
I think so.
Yeah. Jen's Publish Your Purpose has won awards. Do Not Write a Book has won awards, not the exact same awards, but they're both award-winning writing reference books. So you can't really go wrong with either one. And if you really want to double up on the goodness and know that you've got like a trajectory for success, you get both. But I know that both of our books talk about ROI and the economics of getting ROI in your book. So if you need more than what this report, March's episode covers, like, go and grab those two books. And again, we've linked those in the description of the show.
Yep.
And now back to our program. So one of the other things that we wanted to highlight from this survey, especially given that part of the work that I do is as a ghostwriter, is that launch PR firms, ghostwriters, and revenue strategy were correlated with profit. So specifically, I'm just going to quote it because that's probably better. Books with launch PR teams had a median gross profit of $55,500. Those with a strong revenue strategy over $96,000. The median ghostwritten book was 4 times as profitable as other books. Okay, 4 times as profitable.
Wild.
Right? Now, it doesn't necessarily go into details as to why that is, right? But here is where I could speculate. When you are working with a professional ghostwriter who understands how to craft, organize, strategize a book, how to make it flow, how to make it cohesive, how to make sure that appropriate citation and referencing is done, how to make sure your argument is well developed, like all of those things, your book manuscript, the actual writing itself, is going to be better than somebody who doesn't have those skills, who's winging it for the first time and hoping for the best. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't strong writers out there, or that you can't learn these things, or that there aren't other ways to get a really strong manuscript without needing to pay a ghostwriter. There are book coaches, also one of those. And then, of course, there's developmental editors, right, who look at your manuscript and help you shape it. But depending on how that coach or that editor works, they might only be tapping in for a period of time, a period of the book's manuscript development, whereas ghostwriters typically are there from the very beginning, right? Partnering, collaborating, really understanding the objectives, the focus, the message, the intentions, getting to know the author really, really well, diving into research, content, assets, and they're through all of the revisions and all of the development for not just cohesiveness in the manuscript, but cohesiveness in process. So those are some reasons that I could see why ghostwritten manuscripts would be better books and therefore ending up being more profitable in the long run, right?
Yeah.
Jen, anything to say on that?
Yeah. The other thing I would also kind of speculate here is similar to the hybrid books being, you know, more successful than self-published. Same with the ghostwrite. I think it's similar in that if someone's going to make the investment in working with a ghostwriter, it is not an inexpensive process because it's a specialized skill set and it takes a while. Same thing with hiring a hybrid publisher, right? It is a specialized skill set. It's people who know what they're doing. So yes, the quality is going to be better, but I also think an author who is willing to make the investment to work in both of these places of the ghostwriting and working with a hybrid, you have more skin in the game. And when you have more skin in the game, you are more motivated to do the things that are going to help fuel your success. So I think that feels like that has to be some other kind of piece of this equation.
Yeah. And I think, numbers, dollars, cents, all those things. So is actually a good plug for next month's focus. So in February, our whole topic is what numbers should I know in publishing, right? And so that's going to include things like, well, what does it cost to work with a hybrid publisher or a ghostwriter or to get an editor? What about word count? How does word count and page count translate to dollars and cents later down the road or scope of a project? So in some ways, while today is about ROI, it's kind of hard to not talk about some of these other things, right? While we're having this conversation, because all of what you invest from a dollars and cents perspective, all those numbers that we're going to reveal next month have to do with how you're going to then strategically try to earn that money back once that book is out there in the world. And just going away from ghostwriting here just for a moment, but on page 18 of this particular study that we're talking about, right, there's a whole page on unexpected costs, right? So about half of the authors reported unexpected costs. 4 out of 10 authors spent more than expected. 19% spent much more.
Much more.
Much more.
Defining.
I don't know what that means. Like, first-time authors saw more cost overruns, which I think kind of makes sense because it's your first time. You don't necessarily always know what to expect, unless, of course, you have a handy dandy guide right on the side of your desk, like one of our books. Shameless plug number 2. So there's a whole thing here about like unexpected costs, and then it also looks at it from published authors, first book, second book, and then, what was the difference between having a strong strategy or weak strategy in comparison to like the amount of money that was spent that was not expected, right?
That's the stat I think is important because it shows that only 22% if they had a strong strategy, were reporting unexpected costs, 22% versus 69% when you have a weak strategy. I know for us as a hybrid, the thing that I'm always saying is our differentiator is that we focus so heavily on the business strategy. And I love how this report somewhere in here was talking about revenue strategy. Like there's something so important about that. And if you know how much you're spending, you can anticipate your cost and all right, I have to sell X amount of books to get my ROI. I have to do X amount of speaking to get my ROI. I need 1 new client to get the ROI, whatever the data is. It is a significantly easier process because now you have clear goals and objectives and you can put very clear, smart goals around it to say, all right, I know exactly what the ROI is that I'm going for. And now I can look to see what marketing tactics are going to help me actually get there. Because not every marketing tactic is going to have the same results and the same impact on ROI. And so it really helps an author see very clearly, how do I go from A to B to C to Z in this entire process?
Yeah. And like, if you're like, I don't know about marketing, right? And you just want like a snapshot of what 350 other people might've been doing, right? Like page 15 talks about the proportion of authors using particular types of marketing tactics, right? It lists all the things that people in this particular study captured as being what they did, right? And then if you flip to 16, it talks about the proportion of authors using social media tactics specifically, right? And actually notes if they worked well or if they don't know if they worked well or if they worked poorly. And I got to tell you, posts on LinkedIn is at the top.
Blows them all away.
Yeah. Let me tell you what's really low on the list.
Please do.
TikTok. Okay. And that's all I'm going to say. I know it's a hot topic right now and lots of people have lots of feelings about it, but TikTok's on the bottom of the list. Okay.
Yeah.
It's on the freaking bottom.
Again, pay attention to where your readers are. We're talking about business books.
Yes. Yes.
TikTok is probably not, but if you're looking for romance, maybe TikTok's where you want to be.
Maybe.
Who knows? I don't know. We don't do those books. We don't know.
We don't do those books. That's right. So this, but there's just so much data here, folks. There's like just so much data. And even if it's just getting ideas, like there is stuff here to be gleaned. So do not miss out on this resource. Now, going back to the ghostwritten portion of things here on 25. Okay. When we're looking at going back to kind of the correlation between like certain avenues and then correlated to profit, ghostwritten books generated a median gross profit of more than $43,500 after 6 months, despite the cost of the ghostwriter. That part I think is really important. I want to underline that, despite the cost of the ghostwriter. So whether the ghostwriter cost you $10,000 or 40, that doesn't seem to necessarily impact the median gross profit from having worked with the ghostwriter. So now, if I think about this, right, this is a median gross profit, right? So median meaning middle. So obviously not everybody grossed this amount and some people grossed more. But there are ghostwriters who are pretty damn expensive, right? So if your ghostwriter is in a $43,000 price tag amount, and you're grossing profit of 43, then you're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You're starting out strong.
You're starting out strong. So all this to say, if there is a high correlation between choosing certain avenues or certain services and then making a higher profit on the other side, getting your return on investment, then it might be worth really considering, do you invest more upfront, right, for a higher correlation of success on the other side? Now, that does not mean that just because you choose, like, let's say going with a hybrid publisher or going with a ghostwriter automatically means that you're going to gross your profit by 43,500.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
If you don't do anything with the book, even if it's the most beautifully published and the most well-written, if you don't do anything with it, it's not going to sell.
This is not like a passive equation.
No.
Right? Like, you are going to have to work. That's it. Like, you're going to need to go after those speaking gigs, go after those consulting opportunities, go after those workshops, generate those leads from your book, and then be tracking that so that you truly understand how that ROI comes back in. I think this is one of the mistakes, is that because authors often don't realize that their book is there to generate different revenue streams, right? When that client comes to them through having read their book and then believing that they're the person that they want to work with, and they're not then saying, okay, Carol, Carol read my book and then signed for my $25,000 signature program. But then there's no tracking of that metric to identify that $25,000 of income technically was generated from the book. Then we don't really know what revenue or what ROI your book is actually bringing you if you're not noting what's happening there.
So that's an opportunity for those who are not tracking that type of data of where your clients are coming from to start tracking it. A very simple spreadsheet. So every time a new customer joins, say, like, how did you find me? Is it a referral? Did you read my book? Was it social? Like, where might it have been? And I think that, I don't know how well you're tracking your ROI, but I know that I track, tracking my book's ROI too. And I can see that it sold, thousands of copies, which are fine, but like also not where the money is. But in the early days of my book, I had one author, it was her sister-in-law, who said, I think you should read this book. She read the book, found a typo, which is always fun. But I have a page in my book that says, I will send you extra goodies if you find a typo. So like in the first, like it motivated people to find the typo, and hers legit typo. I was like, damn it. And so got into this great exchange back and forth with her. And then within like maybe 2 months, she signed to work with us. And so my entire investment, book sales aside, came from the revenue from this one author who read the book who said, I need to work with this company and this person. So like, that's kind of like the dream that I think all of us are going for, right? Is that someone reads the book and they're just so compelled and inspired by what our message is. And they feel like they learned something that they're like, yeah, I need this company or this person to take it across the finish line with me.
Yeah, I've been not good at tracking. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, so this is definitely like a do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. What I can say is Dear Universe, I Get It Now, which was my first book from 2020, and that was my memoir. That one cost me ballpark 10,000. And what I know is that at least 2 people signed with me as a result of having read Dear Universe, or heavily impacted their decision to get on the call and eventually say yes. So in my mind, that book already generated its ROI. Like, and so I'm not even really focused on that book really anymore in terms of like tracking the revenue. Where I need to be better now is do not write a book until you read this one. Because that's now like when people are kind of gun shy about, I don't actually like that phrase. I'm taking that back. When people are resistant or reluctant or nervous about like the price tag of working with me, but they want more information, they can tell I know what I'm talking about, then my downsell, right? One of my downsells is, look, we'll go grab a copy of Do Not Write a Book. Like, you're gonna gain a wealth of knowledge that's already living up here anyway, that I would eventually just verbalize to you. You know, that's a much easier lift at $45 or whatever it is. Go grab a copy, read it. You want to come back and have a conversation, then great. So what I'm now waiting for, right? I obviously have book sales tracked, but now what I'm waiting for is like for people to start coming in after having read the book and being like, hey, I'm ready to do this. Like, now that I know all the things, right? So
well, I think that's what's great about our books. And again, if we're if we're looking at other authors and doing the same thing that we're basically doing in our own businesses, is that they just know who you are and what your processes are at such an intimate level by reading your book, that when they do sign on the dotted line to say, yes, I want you to be my ghostwriter, yes, I want you to be my publisher, the process is significantly easier because there isn't the learning curve and that heavy lift up front because they took the time to read the 300 pages. Like, it really, I find it to be so much easier of a lift. Or like you were saying before, where it's the downsell to kind of get people in, where like I'll send the ebook sometimes for free. I'll send the audiobook sometimes for free. I'll send them the link. I do it in a variety of different ways. But what I find is that I then put them on a specific email list in my, like a specific sequence in my email that's like, hey, you have a copy of the book. It doesn't specify how, whether they bought it or not. You have a copy of the book. Make sure you go download these couple of things. And then it just kind of keeps sending to them every 5-6 weeks or so, where it's like, hey, did you look at this? And then inevitably they end up coming back because they're like, oh, I'm so happy that your sequence was kind of nurturing me through to just remind me like, oh yeah, she gave me this book, I should probably read it because it is something that I want to do. So there's like, and I think that the more authors can kind of like even add, like, that's just one of those revenue generating strategies that this report is talking about, right? Like, where we have to like really be mindful of like, how are we moving the reader through our process to then get them to us, or make the decision, they're not for me. And that's also like a decision that we want them to make too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the lesson here, folks, right? Like, if you want a good return on investment, you got to bust out all the stops. Like, it's not just, it's going to happen because you decided to write a book.
Yeah.
Like, which is why my book is called Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One, because there are so many things that people don't know and don't think about beforehand. There's no process, there's no strategy. And I get it. Like, you know, the first time you do anything, you don't know anything, right? Like, you know, you have to learn, but you have to be willing to learn, and you have to seek out the information that you don't have, and you have to figure out what you don't know. And so, you know, we are really encouraging you to use resources available to you. Obviously, my book and Jenn's book, they cost money. But this ROI study is free, you know, for the exchange of your email, right? That's a good place to start, right? So if you have a book like on the horizon for this year, or you're already earmarked it for 2026, like, this is the time to be doing your reading, collecting your information, shopping your people, understanding who you need and what you need, and just getting good information, right? so that you can take this in a strategic and processed step-by-step manner, which also will help not feel overwhelmed, or make this feel impossible, right? So, there are lots of resources. There are more wonderful people in the industry, not just Jenn and I. We couldn't take you all on even if we wanted to. So, do your homework and, go for it. Like get the return on investment. It is possible. This study proves that it is. But you got to put some elbow grease in.
Yeah, just got to put the work in. And I feel like for so long there's been this misinformed public about like what publishing looks like, and it's like, every author, locks themselves away in a cabin and takes a sabbatical and does the thing, and they come back and millions of copies have sold without any other work. And I think it's Hallmark movies and Lifetime movies that have like romanticized what it looks like. But if you talk to any, especially the business authors, if you talk to any of them or hear them on podcasts, like they are hustling. Like they're really out there making sure that their book is getting the recognition that it deserves. And so, like we can't just snap our fingers and have millions of sales. It's just not how it works. And at least this study is a good starting point to see, oh, wow, like there's concrete data now. These are all things that you and I have been saying for years, but now there's a concrete data and a concrete study behind it to say like, yeah, this is possible for anyone if you're willing to put in the work.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So folks, we're coming back next month. Let's see. We are coming back on February 27th. For what numbers should I know in publishing? We will be live again at 10.
Yes.
And we're excited to be with you at that point, and to dive into some more awesome information to help you write and publish a book in the most successful way possible. Jenn, anything that you want to announce that's coming up for Publish Your Purpose?
Yeah, I guess last minute, just off the top of my head, it was that we have our next writing cohort beginning in the beginning of March. I think it's March 4th. And that is our 6-month writing program that helps kind of get people the right strategy, the right ideas in one place. It's a max of 6 people in a group. We already have a couple of people signed up. And, if you're really wanting this year to be the year that you get the damn thing written, it is an available option. And you can check out publishyourpurpose.com. And at the top, there's 2 tabs, writing support and publishing support. So whichever one you need, you're welcome to pop in there and reach out to us.
Awesome. I'm still getting my stuff together for the year. But this is what I can say because I'm super excited about it. So I'm just going to put it out there, even though it's still in kind of conceptualization mode. I am working on a signature program that is going to be basically completely redoing the way that not redoing, but it's combining all of my coaching and a previously built masterclass into one program. And I am calling that the memoir experience. So I'm going all in on memoir. This is a 12-month virtual program for the silenced and unseen to be intimately coached in the art and craft of writing a memoir and honoring your story. This is taking you from ideation to manuscript development and educating you along the way and offering you introductions and information on publishing partners so that when you're done, you know where you're sending that baby. I'm super pumped about this. I am thinking that we will be launching this spring, April or May. But what I'm looking for right now are for people who this speaks to jump on a call with me, learn more about me, learn more about what this experience is going to look like, that know that they want to write a book about their life, and we'll take it from there. So the memoir experience, you can hit me up in the DMs on LinkedIn predominantly. That's really where I'm hanging out these days. Or come on over to twprt.com, find the connect button, send me a message, and I'll be sure to get in touch with you.
I love it. Look at that. Very exciting. See, watching this, you get first access to information that things are not even done yet. How great
Things are not even done yet. Yep. Sneak peek, my friends. So Jenn, have a great day.
You as well. I appreciate you. And I'm so happy that we have our whole year planned because it's like stress-free right now. We can just say goodbye, and here we are.
Easy peasy. All right, folks, thanks for joining us. Drop any comments or questions down for us in the comments section, and we will be sure to respond. We'll see you next time.
Bye.